Welcome to listening to Stories on Kevin TV audiobook channel, Chapter 2326. Searching for the Absolute Power 2. Shortly after arriving at the Immortal Monastery, Tian Yang contacted Shura. I'm currently at the Immortal Monastery where I spent the majority of my youth. I see Shura ended the connection almost instantly. Tian Yang didn't immediately travel to the next destination. Instead, he lingered at the Immortal Monastery, silently observing them from the sky. Although most of the sect had changed, he recognized several buildings and areas, such as the Bamboo Garden, which managed to survive the Immortal Clan's attack due to it being disconnected from the main part of the sect. After lingering above the sect for some time, Tian Yang noticed a presence approaching him from the sect. A few moments later, a middle-aged man with sharp facial features stopped before Tian Yang and greeted. "Greetings. I am the sect master of this sect, Wu Wing. Do you have any business with the Immortal Monastery?" The middle-aged man, the current sect master of the Immortal Monastery, sensed Tian Yang's presence as soon as he arrived, yet he assumed Tian Yang was simply passing by and ignored him. But when Tian Yang lingered, however, he had no choice but to approach, moreover. Since Tian Yang was in the God realm and the sect master was only at the true immortal realm, he couldn't sense Tian Yang's cultivation level. "I can't sense his cultivation even though we're so close." The sect master cried inwardly after realizing this. "I used to be a disciple here," Tian Yang calmly replied. "Before this place was renovated, that is. Are you responsible for rebuilding this place?" The sect master's eyes widened slightly at Tian Yang's words. "You're a first-generation disciple? Then you're my senior. What happened in the past must have been traumatic for you." "No, I was away at that time and managed to avoid it." Tian Yang shook his head. "Is that so? Anyway, to answer your question, no, I am not responsible for what you are seeing now. It was the last sect master and the disciples who stayed that did all of the work. I only replaced him a few years ago. So you're the third sect master, huh? Well, I was only reminiscing about the past. I apologize if my presence bothered you. There's no way you're a first-generation disciple. If anything, it's an honor to have you. Would you like a tour around the sect?" Wu Wing suddenly asked. Tian Yang didn't immediately give a response. After pondering for a moment, he nodded. "All right, I have some time." Wu Wing then led Tian Yang to their front gate and started giving a tour himself. "What was life like in the sect back then?" Wu Wing asked as they toured the sect. Tian Yang recalled his own experience and the atmosphere of the sect and its disciples back then, comparing them to what he was looking at now. "What about the first sect master, our ancestor? What was he like?" Tian Yang shook his head and said, "Unfortunately, I never got to meet him. But from what I heard, he was an ambitious individual who deeply cared for the sect and wanted it to stand at the top of the world." He then asked what happened to him after the incident. "The ancestor has been in seclusion ever since the previous sect master took power." "So he's still at the sect?" Tian Yang raised an eyebrow. "Yes, that's right. However, he hasn't left for over 100,000 years. Honestly, we don't know if he's even still alive." Tian Yang suddenly shifted his head to look in a certain direction. It was subtle, but he could sense a powerful aura coming from the direction, and it was still within the sect. "He's still alive," Tian Yang calmly said. Wu Wing's eyes widened with shock. You can tell?" Tian Yang offered a silent confirmation. "Thank you, Senior." Wu Wing bowed to him. "By the way, I haven't heard your name yet." "My name," Tian Yang hesitated for a moment before responding with a fake name, "is Xiao Yang." Since he was the reason the Immortal Clans uprooted the Immortal Monastery, he didn't dare to reveal his real name, as there was a good chance the sect master would recognize him. Senior Xiao, then. They continued to tour the sect. Since the sect master himself was leading Tian Yang, their presence instantly attracted the attention of the disciples. "Who is that man besides the sect master?" "I have never seen the sect master smile like that before." Even the sect elders were intrigued by Tian Yang's identity, but none of them dared to approach. Eventually, they finished touring the sect. "Thank you for today, sect master." I'm truly glad to see the immortal monastery where I grew up has become such a magnificent place. It was a pleasure to meet you today, Senior Shao. I have learned a lot about our own sect, even some lost knowledge. If you ever feel like visiting again, our sect will always welcome you. The sect master retrieved a medallion and offered it to him. As long as you have this medallion, you will be an honored guest at the immortal monastery. Thank you. Tian Yang didn't linger and set off to his next destination. A few days later, he arrived at a city near a vast ocean. Despite how much time has passed, the place looked almost identical to when he last visited. This was where people went if they wanted to travel to the giant's continent, and where Tian Yang first met Huang Xiaoli and her family. He contacted Shura shortly after arriving. The connection went through, but they didn't exchange any words, as Shura closed the connection almost immediately afterward. The only place to check now would be the giant's continent, but Tian Yang pondered for a moment before flying across the vast ocean and towards the giant's continent. A few days later, he stopped when he could see his destination at the horizon. Yet he didn't try to get any closer and stared at it from a distance with wide eyes. Even without needing to get close, he could sense an intense and malicious aura coming from the continent. Chapter 2327. Searching for the Absolute Power 3. I don't even need to get close to it to sense Zaran's influence that envelopes this entire place. Tian Yang sighed. Kulas, are you still alive? After lingering for some time, Tian Yang tried to contact Shura. Although he wasn't on Giant's continent, he was close enough. If the Absolute Being's powers existed on the Giant's continent, it would likely still affect him to some extent. A minute later, Shura responded to his call. I am currently at the Giant's continent, where I have spent the majority of my life. Once again, Shura ended the connection without a word. Afterward, Tian Yang prepared to visit other places. However, just as he turned around and began flying away, he sensed a powerful gaze directed at him. Tian Yang instantly halted his movements and turned around to face the gaze that was coming from the giant's continent. The gaze felt familiar yet foreign at the same time. Kulas, no, Zaran. Tian Yang gritted his teeth and clenched his fists in frustration. Now that he was in the God realm, he was able to penetrate the invisible barrier that surrounded the giant's continent and blocked off surveillance, looking directly into it with divine sense. When Tian Yang used his divine sense to observe the situation, he was left utterly shocked by what he saw. A massive gathering had formed around colossal Mammoth City. Nearly the entire giant race surrounded it. Their colossal bodies bowed in deep prostration as they worshipped the palace or whatever resided within it. When Tian Yang looked deeper and extended his divine sense inside the palace, he could see a massive silhouette seated in Kula's room, silently staring back at him with crimson eyes. The instant Tian Yang's gaze met the crimson eyes, a terrifying aura erupted from the silhouette, sending a violent ripple surging outward from the island and nearly lifting the surrounding ocean into the air. The aura, without doubt, belonged to an expert in the God realm, but Tian Yang could also sense something otherworldly mixed in. Tian Yang didn't dare to linger any longer and immediately fled the scene. He could tell just by the aura that he was no match for Zaran at this moment, so there was no reason to endanger himself by staying there. The eruption of that terrifying aura didn't just drive Tian Yang away, it also alerted the experts watching the giant's continent from nearby islands, most of whom belonged to the 3 pillars of heaven. Once they sensed the aura, they immediately reported back to the 3 pillars of heaven, confirming their suspicions that Kulas had reached the God realm. Realizing that Kulas had evolved into a powerhouse they could no longer confront on their own, the 3 pillars of heaven began aggressively forming alliances, claiming that the giant race would soon launch an invasion on the human race. In truth, they had no concrete evidence that such an invasion would occur. The claim was merely a pretext, one used to further their own agenda. Little did they know they were right on the money. Tian Yang continued to backtrack his steps for the next few years, returning to every single location he'd gone in the past. Unfortunately, even after going to every location, he was unable to find the absolute being's power. I have been to every location except one, but I no longer have access to that place, Tian Yang explained to Shura at the last location. Han Zexian's tomb. It existed on the Giant's continent before, but it has since disappeared. Shura then spoke. The absolute power isn't at that place. How do you know? Tian Yang asked. Because the absolute power is too powerful to be contained in a small dimension like that. Moreover, you were able to contact me in the past from that location. Oh, right, I almost forgot about that. Then what should I do now? Shura pondered for a moment before responding. The absolute power might have sealed your memories, at least the part where you found it. The only way for you to fight the absolute power and regain your memories is to gain the power of Eternals. What? Tian Yang's eyes widened at such words. But I am a mortal. How can I obtain the power of an Eternal, much less wield it also? I thought that an Eternal's power is useless against the absolute power, so how can I possibly... Frankly, I don't know if it's possible for a mortal to wield our power. However, it's worth trying. As for your other concern, I'm also just guessing. There's a chance it might work, and a chance it won't. There's no way of knowing until you try. I'll tell you more once you reach the next level. All right, Freebelin, Lim. Could a connection ended there and Tian Yang returned home. Upon returning to his own world, Tian Yang immediately resumed cultivation. Unable to contend with Kulas at his current level, he had no choice but to break through to the next realm, not to mention his situation with Shura. Unfortunately, that was far easier said than done. Although Tian Yang knew exactly what was required for the next level, the demands were so immense that reaching it within any meaningful time frame was all but impossible. Yet he had no choice but to try. Moreover, Ren Xia and Sun Rushi had yet to emerge from their seclusion, so there wasn't anything else he could do. 5,000 years, 10,000 years after Tian Yang entered the God realm, Sun Rushi emerged from her seclusion. Congratulations on your breakthrough. Tian Yang could sense her breakthrough even before she emerged, so he was prepared to greet her the moment she came out of her immortal cave. How long has it been since your breakthrough? Sun Rushi asked him with a defeated smile after realizing that she wasn't first. About 20,000 years, I guess. If I had been able to cultivate the improved soul cultivation technique, I would have definitely come out first, she sighed. Most likely. Tian Yang nodded, not refuting it. Chapter 2328, What Makes Them Different. After Sun Rushi emerged from her seclusion, Tian Yang briefed her about the current situation in the world, as well as his current goal. What? You're already aiming for the next level when you've just entered the God realm? Sun Rushi looked at him with concern. I know it's natural for cultivators to always seek advancement, but you seem unusually rushed. Is this because of Kulas? Since Tian Yang only revealed the information of Eternals to Ren Xia, Sun Rushi was unaware of his full situation. However, she could tell that he was keeping something from her. Yet she didn't pursue it and patiently waited for him to reveal it once he was prepared. Something like that? Tian Yang nodded. I know I'm just wasting my breath by saying this, but don't push yourself too hard. I won't. I have already gotten past the hardest part, which is entering the God realm. Now it's mostly a trial of endurance and patience, since it'll likely take twice as long to reach the next level. Now that Sun Rushi had emerged from her cultivation, Tian Yang's daily routine changed slightly. Rather than spending all of his time cultivating, he would occasionally spend some time with her in the bedroom. Time continued to pass, and after another 20,000 years, Ren Xia also came out of her immortal cave, her cultivation now at the God realm. I'm last. Ren Xia sighed with a defeated look after realizing that she was the last to enter the God realm. Tian Yang was first, Sun Rushi said. I guess we both owe you a favor then. Of course, you still owe me one, in case you forgot, Ren Xia said, reminding him of their previous bet. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten, said Tian Yang before he briefed her on the situation. What? You visited the Giant's continent. I know I don't have the right to criticize you since I did the same thing, but Ha! Ren Sha sighed out loud. I didn't go inside, but I saw the situation inside the continent with my divine sense. Tian Yang continued before explaining exactly what he saw to Ren Xia. Ren Xia shivered after learning the situation and said, I guess the illness has spread to the rest of the giant race. I don't even want to imagine what they might do next. The three pillars of heaven believe the giant race will invade our land, said Tian Yang. Sun Rusi shook her head and said, knowing them, they are saying that just to make forming alliances easier. Even if that's true, I also think that the giant race will invade our land soon. They are looking for something, and they will stop at nothing to achieve their goal. Tian Yang sighed. What are they looking for? Ren Xia asked with a raised eyebrow. And how do you know? I spoke with that. Tian Yang gave a vague response since Sun Rushi was present and he didn't want to reveal the forbidden knowledge so suddenly. That? Sun Rushi looked at him with a confused expression. Meanwhile, Ren Xia immediately understood what he meant and nodded. I see. She looked at Sun Rushi a moment later and spoke. Don't you think we should tell her about that? She's in the God realm, so she has enough longevity. There's something we've been keeping a secret from you because it contains knowledge that requires you to sacrifice your longevity to learn. I knew you were hiding something from me, but to think it was something like this. All right, tell me. I don't care if I have to sacrifice some of my lifespan. Sun Rosi quickly came to a decision. Tian Yang nodded and revealed the existence of Eternals to her, as well as Kulis's real situation. However, he kept the knowledge about the Absolute Being and its power a secret for the time being. Eternals, huh? Sun Rusi muttered with a slightly surprised look on her face. You're not as shocked as I expected, Ren Xia remarked. She shrugged lightly. I've spent most of my life surrounded by outrageous things, so I've grown somewhat resistant to this sort of revelation. In fact, now that I know about Eternals, I've finally solved one of the biggest mysteries of my life. What's that? Tian Yang inquired. The Enlightened One, she replied, with a solemn face. He claims to receive revelations and teachings from heaven, and despite his undeniable results, I have always been skeptical of it. However, things are different now. So you think that the Enlightened One is being backed by an Eternal, Ren Xia remarked. It's highly likely, Tian Yang said. According to Shura, all of the Eternals are looking for the same thing within our world, and since they cannot approach our world for whatever reason, they require someone already here to do their bidding. In return, they'd grant their puppet power and knowledge. Is that so? Sun Rusi mumbled with a pondering face. By the way, are you feeling okay? Tian Yang suddenly asked as he looked at Sun Rusi. I feel fine. Why do you ask? She calmly replied. Seriously, you don't feel even a little fatigued after sacrificing your longevity. Tian Yang looked at her with wide eyes. Sun Rushi nodded and said, I know what it feels like to have an unnatural amount of your longevity vanish in the blink of an eye, but I didn't feel anything like that. In fact, I don't think I had to sacrifice any longevity. Tian Yang's jaw dropped after hearing her words. Sun Rushi's situation was exactly the same as Ren Xia. Their longevity isn't being sacrificed even after learning about Eternals? How is that possible? Tian Yang cried inwardly. He was certain that those he forced to learn the forbidden knowledge had died after having all of their longevity sacrificed. So what makes Sun Rushi and Ren Xia so different? Is it because I cultivated with them? A weird thought suddenly entered his mind.